Hit it. All right, we're back. Episode 7 of Roasting Toast
Seven.
Baseball Radio. We have a guest today to get into the Oakland Athletics crap. So how about able introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Connor Schnabel. Played 5 years college baseball at McDaniel with Will and Tom and Finch, who was on the last couple episodes. So know those guys pretty well. I have a vast background in different sports. Currently in the workforce, though. Sadly, I didn't get into didn't get in as far as athletic as I wanted to, but feel like I have a lot of knowledge to spread. Maybe not all factual, or everyone will agree with it, but I feel like I have some background knowledge, especially on Oakland Athletics. So always happy to talk about my swinging A's.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it with you because you have a vast amount of knowledge about some sports that I've never even heard of. So let's get into it. Jackson Holliday is currently making his debut at Fenway Park, which is
Hmm.
awesome that he gets to make his debut there. That's can't ask for a better place to do it unless you're at home. So my question is he the most hot? Like, who is the last prospect that was this hyped?
Got to go deep.
I was thinking Vladdy Jr. 2018. He was pretty hyped.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I'm not as hyped as some other guys. Like from my memory, recent memory, I'm thinking like Yasiel Puig.
Hmm?
He had a big tag behind him. Harper in
There,
2012.
I was
Trout.
going to say there's two debuts that I distinctly remember when I was younger, and it was the Strasburg's debut and the Harper debut. Both those national guys, those prospect hype between them, and just that push out was just crazy. And I think there is many people in the world who never watch the Orioles who are turning in right now just to see Jackson Holliday.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 20 years old, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like
Crazy.
that's pretty nuts. Like that's insane.
Think
I,
about
I
what
Put
he
in
did
just
at 20,
perspective.
Tom.
I just saw a
Like,
tweet
dude,
or a post from MLB, and they were like players born after 2003, and it's Jackson Merrill, Jackson Holiday. Um, there's another guy I missed it, but
Jackson Church,
and then it's
Yeah.
Churio. So all the
Mhm.
Jacksons. It seems
Yeah.
that
A lot of talent though, man. Like I mean, he's one of those true guys that has like basically five tools. He can feel it. He's got some speed. He can run the bases. He can hit for power. He can hit for average. Like he's got a lot of tools, and he has a big background with his dad and his brother behind him, Ethan, who's a couple years younger, and he's on the verge of becoming a big prospect
Mhm.
as well. So I mean, he's got the pedigree. It's just about can he translate it tonight? Not yet, but I think he'll get there in time.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Did you guys see the old tweet from Buster Only back in 2013?
yes,
Wild, pretty wild.
I did see
For
that.
those
called
for
it,
the
dude.
for those who didn't see, on November 14th, 2013, Buster Only, who's a credited reporter for years at ESPN, said Matt Holliday's son, future All Star, and then some guy responds, "A little too early to say that, isn't it?" He goes, "I've seen him hit. I stand by that tweet." He was 9 years old when he tweeted that. So
That's insane.
yeah,
The
Yeah, he's
fact
got an eye. He should become a scout or something, man.
You got to put a graphic up there too while Demetrius is talking about it. That's gonna look
yeah,
cool.
the
Yeah,
fact that he was 9 years old,
9 years old.
teen in
that's absurd.
2013 makes no sense.
Oh, it's
I mean,
so.
He's got
I saw
such
a
a pretty
video.
swing, though.
Oh,
He's
he
got
does.
such
He's
a
got that
pretty
lefty
swing,
swing,
dude.
man.
Yeah.
I just saw a video today of when Holiday was playing for the Rockies, and he must have been Jackson must have been like maybe 3 years old, but Matt Holiday had him out there like just on like off the first base track and or first baseline, and he was just like throwing like wiffle balls. And I was like, could you imagine being like growing up in your formative years and you're just on like big league ballparks just taking at
Vladdy Jr.
yeah, same thing.
Right.
It's
No,
crazy.
I couldn't imagine. I'll say that. No, I
Yeah,
could
Right.
never imagine.
I was taking swings at the park like by my house. Yeah,
I
that's
guess
pretty similar, right?
what we're saying here is like the two most hyped dudes recently have been Vladdy Jr. and Jackson Holliday, and that's kind of because they have this pedigree where their dad played in the pros. So I'm gonna agree with Demetrius here. Like Bryce Harper and Steven Strasburg, they didn't have that. They had it a little bit differently, especially Harper. Like, dude was the LeBron of baseball, and he's pretty much turned out to be. I mean, he's not the greatest of all time, but he's one of the best players I've ever seen. I mean, besides Soto, can you name a more disciplined hitter than him? I don't think you can.
Not last 2 days in St. Louis, but we'll give him a pass for that. No,
All right,
you're
so
spot on with that, Will.
Yeah, we're gonna move into the Oakland A's stuff because it's absolutely ridiculous. It's a shame. I mean, Reggie Jackson was talking about it yesterday, saying he's embarrassed for the sport of baseball. So I'm gonna let Schnabel get into this because I know you're very passionate about Oakland and the Athletics. So let's hear what you got.
Yeah,
Bring it
man.
on, Schnabel.
So I mean, growing up, I mean, I grew up in the Philly area, so I mean, I got my Fanatic hat on today. I'm a Philly guy through and through, but a lot of people don't know the A's were also in Philly prior to moving to Kansas City in the
Never should
50s.
have left.
Yeah, well, there's people in the Philly media right now talking about we should move them to Center City. I'm like, oh, that'll be a nightmare. But hey, I honestly,
Put them in Chinatown instead of the new Sixer Stadium.
yeah, that'll go over well. Yeah. Um, but before they moved to Kansas City, they were stationed in Philadelphia at Shibe Park or Connie Mack Stadium, whatever you want to call it. Um, and they had, Connie Mack was their manager for like 30, 40 years, and he was also like part GM. Like he did a bunch of things and really built up the franchise there, and he won like 4 or 5 World Series. Like he had a lot of success. On the other side, you had the Phillies, who in those early years, who actually Phillies are been around since 1883, and I think they have the worst win percentage of any other franchise. So, interesting little like caveat there. I mean, I'm a Phillies fan, but I like to call it how it is, and it's not great. It's been better the last 20 years, I'll say that, but the A's had so much more success, especially like 30s, 40s, 50s when this like Phillies were just terrible. But then obviously the whiz kids in the 50s, so the Phillies got better. But getting back to Oakland, you saw them move out to Kansas City in the 60s, and then they moved out with Charles Finley, who was the owner at the time. He moved them out to Oakland. And he was a great master showman, had a like bunch of different programs that he brought out, and so many people came out to the new ballpark, and there was a lot of like early success. So you brought them out in the 68. You saw them win five straight pennants, 3 World Series from 71 or 72 to 74. They had a just absurd amount of talent. You're talking guys like Reggie Jackson, Sal Bando, Rudy Campaneros, Bert Campaneros, Catfish Hunter, Raleigh Fingers, Vida Blue. Like there's so much talent in those teams. And you know, yeah, swinging A's. That's where the term is coined because they won 5 straight pennants. Like that is unheard of. 3 straight World Series. That's probably never going to happen again. And then after his tenure in 1980, you saw Walter Haas become the new owner slash. I think he was part GM for a little bit of time too. But he was another guy. He got a lot of success early. He won 5 division titles, 3 World Series appearances in a row from 88 to 90. So another guy, you had a lot of success in Oakland. You're building up this big rapport for this team in like out west in the AL West, who wasn't a very strong division at the time. I guess the Astros had some success in the 70s and 80s, but
They were in the NL at that time.
oh, that's right. You're completely right. I completely forgot about that. Um, I don't know. I guess because they're in the AL now, I was always think of them as an AL team. Um,
I forgot
but
about
yeah,
that too.
I mean, there's other. What's that?
Said I forgot about that too. Yeah, I didn't realize
Yeah.
that.
But yeah, and then they won the title in '89, which was against crosstown rivals San Francisco Giants. They blew them out. I mean, and if you want to look at a crazy team, look at the '89 A's. Like that team was loaded. You're talking guys like Canseco, McGuire. I mean, they had Dave Stewart coming out, like just insane amount of talent. Dennis Eckersley out of the pen, one of the best closers of all time. I mean, just absurd talent. But Walter Haas, after the 1990 season, you saw like a lot of guys started leaving. Some players like they weren't able to resign, i.e., like McGuire. McGuire stayed a little longer, but like Canseco, like just couldn't re-sign some of these guys that garnered some more higher contracts, more money, etc. So you see some guys leaving, and then you see the success kind of drop off in the 90s, and then Walter Haas ends up dying in 1995, which is where you get the new ownership with Steven Schott and Ken Hoffman, who is what Steven Schott is who you see in the Moneyball movie, and you kind of see where that whole I don't want to spend money on the team comes from. If you watch that movie, you can see the guy's kind of a dick, right? Billy Bean comes to him. He's like, I need money. I want to sign players. Steven Shaw basically puts up like, I'm not giving you anything. Like I'm giving you 50 million, whatever. Like
Figure it out.
yeah, figure it out. Basically, like you're gonna have to like the whole Moneyball thing got coined because of that movie. And Sandy Alderson actually was part GM too, in the 80s and 90s, who is now the Mets. I think he's a part of the Mets
Well,
organization.
He was in
Um,
He was, then
Right.
wasn't, then
Yeah.
was, and then
And that's where he was able to help bring in a lot of these young players. And another thing that the Moneyball movie is completely wrong about that team. Like that team was stacked. They come out and they're like, oh, this team, like they lost Giambi, they lost Isringhausen, and they lost Johnny Damon. It's like they had so many other guys. It doesn't
Mhm.
even matter. They won 103 games that year. It's crazy.
Wow.
I mean, they had Hudson, you had Mark Mulder, and then Barry Zito. Like
I
that's
said
an
Barry
insane
Zito.
big three. And
In
then
the
take
movie, they don't
like
mention Miguel Tejada or Eric.
Miguel Tejada and Eric Chavez. Like sure, Eric Chavez, my favorite player growing up too. I mean, that guy was a stud.
Yeah.
But so you see the success in the early 2000s, where they, a little bit of success with Schott and Hoffman. From I think they went to the playoffs 4 straight years from 2000 to 2003, and then '06 is they finally won a playoff series. Like they never won any playoff series from 2000 to 2004. '06 they finally get back to the ALCS where they obviously get swept by the Tigers who went on the World Series. That infamous Ordonez home run off of Houston Street. Oh, it still was taken in my heart. I was only like 8 years old at the time, but I remember where I was when I watched. I was like, you gotta be kidding me! It's gonna happen again. But then from actually '05, right before the '06 or the end of '05 season, Walt Mr. John Fisher becomes owner, and so he gets immediate success. Obviously, '06 season and '05 season they were pretty good, but that's definitely because of like the past ownership and general managers who kind of brought in these players and already had a core around this team. But then you see at '06, right after '06, there's a big drop off. You see a lot of players leave. '07 to 2011, they're bottom dwellers again. 2012 and 2013 are magical years. I remember like these years like it was yesterday. I mean, you had like nobody's on their team. Kila Kaiahue. Does anyone know who that guy is? He played a little part in that team.
Royals
Jemiah
great.
Weeks. Yeah, Jemiah Weeks was on that team. Josh Reddick. I mean, I remember these teams like yesterday. Coco Chris was doing the Dougie in the outfield. I mean, it was great. But that team was projected to finish last in the division that year. They
Mhm.
come out of nowhere. And I saw something, someone said basically like the only reason why the A's were able to be anywhere successful in the 2010s is because like despite of the ownership who continuously was in bottom quarter of the league in spending and payroll. He refuses to upgrade the stadium. And people keep talking about how, oh, the team, they don't bring in like even when the team is good, no one wants to come and watch the team. Like, okay, I get that. Like you can look at any kind of statistics and say, oh yeah, they're 11th out of 14 in the AL. Like they're no one wants to come watch them, even when they're good. Well, how even if a team is good, why would I want to come to a dilapidated stadium where there's rats, mice, and possums sticking their head out of the walls? Like you got to upgrade the stadium eventually. Make it so that I want to come to the stadium, not like, oh yeah, like the team's pretty good, that should be enough. You can see early on, like John Fisher wants to move this team, which is where you get in like the Howard Terminal project and um, all that stuff. So that was like one of the closest that the Oakland City Council got to of actually keeping the team in Oakland and making a new stadium. They got pretty far. I mean, up until 2022, like it was like this is a real possibility. It was like a $12 billion deal. Oakland City Council was like approving all these ecological plans to make sure that it made sense for the city and for traffic and all these other things. And it kept like everyone kept voting on it. It kept passing, it kept passing, it kept passing until 2023 when Dave Cavill, who's like current general manager, and Steve and John Fisher basically kept dragging their feet, and just kept extending negotiations. Even though like city council, they're going to make so taxpayers going to pay for it, of course. Even though John Fisher's worth billions of dollars, he doesn't want to put any of his dime into the stadium, just like every other owner. I mean, it's typical putting on the taxpayer and the city council, but they keep dragging their feet about negotiations. Eventually, Rob Manfred steps in and is like, if you guys keep dragging this out, like I'm gonna force your hand to move, and that's exactly what John Fisher wanted. That's where this out of the blue, this Las Vegas, like around this time last year, the Las Vegas plan came in,
Mhm.
and the rest is history, as they say. Um, I mean, even up, and people don't even like remember, like up until 3 years ago, the team was 10 games over 500.
Yeah.
They had a really good team in 21, 2020. They made the playoffs in 2020, won a series in the 2020. I mean,
Stadium back in 2020.
yeah, yeah. I
Or
mean,
maybe not in 2020, but you get the gist. Obviously, COVID was happening, but
basically, like if you want to like round this off in any way, it's like all these people I keep seeing on in like media. The defense is always like you can look at Baseball Reference and see that they're always bottom of the league in attendance, and even in 2018 and 19 when they were good, like sure, yeah, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Like these fans have been here for like they've been fans since 1968, right? So they know they have a high expectation of what to expect from ownership. They haven't had it for since 1995, right? These people keep cutting spending, cutting the payroll, selling their favorite players for pennies, right? I mean, you see, as recently as Matt Chapman, you got three players in return. The best out of those three has been Kevin Smith, who's currently playing for the Mets. Like, that's terrible. Matt Chapman was incredible. He was one of the best players for Oakland for the past 5 years. And you get Kevin Smith as the best player out of that return. Like, it's terrible. That guy played 2 years for Oakland, didn't play more, played less than 50 games both years, and hit under 200, under the Mendoza line both years. You have to get, if you want to keep people in the seats, you got to keep players on the field that actually people want to watch. And that's where you see like the 2012 and 13 season, like, yeah, they were good, but I mean, there was no like big name player that you want to come watch besides maybe Cespedes, who on a good team where he went to the Mets, he wasn't even their best player. So it's like, you got to put quality players on the field for people to stay. And people always say like, yeah, they bottom league in viewer, even when they're good. Like the stadium is dilapidated. Like I said earlier, it's dilapidated. Who wants to go and watch a game at that old stadium where there's literally pieces of like pieces of the stadium are falling apart? Like it's terrible.
It's embarrassing, dude. It's embarrassing. On that
is.
topic of the players, like even with the Tampa Bay Rays, who are very successful with what they do, like it's hard to be a fan of a team that doesn't invest in players and keep them on the squad. Like you got no one to really love because the roster is turning over every single season. It's hard to root for a team like that as much success as they might have. And if the team sucks and there's roster turnover, I don't know, man. It's not good.
I think the
Nobody wants to
final
put all the
straw for
time and
the
effort.
the final straw for the fans, I feel like with the team wise when they traded Matt Olson, like
Yeah.
he was starting to become this top hitter, especially in 2020. He was starting. It was like that was when his year when he started actually like hitting very well.
Yeah, he had over 100 RBIs, over 30 home runs. Like he
Yeah,
was incredible. He won a platinum glove. Like those 18 and 19 teams, I watched out of 162 games, I probably watched 160. Like they were so fun to watch. Like they had such a and Blake Trinan had like a sub 1 ERA, who was
Right.
a nobody. Like this is another fear.
Facts though.
They were so good at bringing in just guys who weren't everyday players on good teams, and the ownership is like, oh, this guy costs, I can pay 725,000 for this guy, bring him in. This guy throws a 99 miles an hour, but he has control issues. I'll bring him in. Who cares? If he's not good, I'll get rid of him. I don't care. And these guys like Stephen Piscotty, Mark Canha got his big break with the A's. He was a nobody. And now he's going from team to team, a big free agent signing, a right-handed bat who can hit for pop. Like these guys were absolutely nobodies before they came to Oakland. They give them a leash. They're like, yeah, come over and play for us. We don't have anybody else. And these guys who aren't everyday players, they get the chance to play every day. And some of them are really successful. And that's where you see these blips out of all these terrible seasons are because they get lucky on a few people they wanted to pay a league minimum on.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seeing right now with Brent Rooker, who's arguably their best player.
Yeah. So on that topic, like it's bad what's going on. But like this move to Sacramento to me makes it even worse.
Dude.
It's a
Because
joke.
it's so stupid. It's so
It's an
stupid.
absolute. And then you see
How
guys,
can you do that as a
Yeah.
Major League Baseball club?
Sure.
Like it fucking blows my mind.
like I would be okay with this if it was like one season, right?
Yeah.
One season, whatever. This is 3 years. They don't have any plan for
it could possibly even more. It could be
Yeah.
even more than three too. It's
Ay.
but then my issue is you have guys like I respect John Boy in the media, but last week he had a tweet basically saying like I think this is a good move. Like
Yeah, I saw
he
that.
said like this is a good move. I think that'd be cool like
What?
sitting in the outfield and watching an like a major league ball club. I'm like, there's 10,000 people in the stands. There's one batting cage, and there's like 4 bathrooms in the whole place. Like, this is a joke. It's an absolute joke, and it's a stain on a great organization, like a storied franchise, one of those storied franchises in the whole of the MLB, and they're playing at a 10,000 seat stadium. It's a joke.
So I have a question for all of you guys. Do you think this Las Vegas move actually happens?
Yeah,
At least with this
Seems like
owner in place.
it
With
seems
John
like
yeah, I do. Honestly, I think they're just going to bank on that success that the Golden Knights have had, and the fact that they just see teams that can rise there. That's why they're pushing for it. But like, it's just put a big strain on this franchise.
have such a hard time seeing this actually panning out with him as the owner. Like
It's going to. Sorry, go ahead.
go for it, Tom. Go for it.
It's going to work out because every the way the sports is going right now with all the betting culture, like it's in everything now. Like I was looking at the Phillies game the other day, and there was 4 ads for Bet ESPN, and then 8 more for DraftKings throughout the whole stadium. Like it's everywhere, and it's becoming so integrated. And what better place to put a brand new stadium for this crappy team in the biggest betting city in the world in the world?
Yeah,
That's a good
Like
point.
Las Vegas, and they did it with the Raiders, and it's kind of working out
yeah.
for them.
Back on you. The Raiders did it well. I don't see John Fisher and this Oakland ownership group doing anything well. Like, if you go to Vegas, you have to make it a show. You have to make people want to come. Who's gonna want to be in Vegas and want to come to a shitty baseball game?
No,
watching a mediocre team play.
I mean, the Raiders Stadium has a full ass like nightclub in there,
yeah.
I mean,
like
yeah,
during the
they
game.
have to do stuff like that. I don't
That's
see
what
They're
it's
gonna
going to
have
be.
to.
money.
The problem with that is that half the fans aren't even Oakland fans.
Right.
Like they're
Yeah.
the opposing team.
They don't
That's like
care.
that's the same
Yeah.
thing that's gonna happen. It's like the same thing with like the Chargers and the
Yeah.
Rams. Like no
That's
one
what I
would.
just
The SoFi is like
But
I saw
does that
someone
work
talk.
for baseball though? Because we play 162 games.
I know.
There's
seven-
it's gonna be crickets in there. Like middle of July, August, like no one's gonna be there, especially
They're
if
gonna
they're
have to.
20 games
have
out
to
of
have a
first
dome.
place.
They have to have a
They're
dome. That's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. They
They're
can't
going to put a
play outside.
casino in it.
Yeah. Tom,
Well,
you should
They're
get
gonna
a
put a
there's
developer.
gonna be
casino in it.
there's gonna
Tom,
be a
they should
sports
hire you
book.
as a
All
developer.
these ones do. All these new ones. I know Vegas they have a sports book. I mean, I know
Yeah.
more cities around here, like the Cubs just have a new sports book in there in Wrigley.
outside regularly.
I mean, I was seeing as of even like a month ago, there's people in I'm pretty connected with like well not connected, but I follow a lot of people on like Twitter and like other socials who are A's fans and like live in Oakland and they talk about the move all the time. But they were talking to someone who lives in Vegas, like he's a big Vegas Golden Knights fan, and he was talking about how everyone who's in Vegas, like they don't care about the Raiders being like that's not they view it as that's not their team. They go like if you watch the Golden Knights who are absurdly successful, just won the Stanley Cup last year,
Yeah.
they sell that place out. I mean, it helps to be really good, but people have adopted it because that's their team. If you
Well,
bring
they were also an expansion team. They weren't a team
Yeah.
that
exactly. So that's why they view it as like their baby because that was an expansion team. Like you can't call it anybody else's. If you bring in Oakland or if you bring in the Athletics and you bring in the Raiders, like that's not they view that as like that's not our team. Even though they're called Las Vegas, like some of these people like they just feel like they can't adopt it.
That's really interesting.
Good point. Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna have to move on. Maybe we can get into this another week. But the other big thing that's happening in baseball right now is this absolute insane amount of pitching injuries that are happening to the top pitchers in the sport. So I know so many people have been talking about what's the cause, why is this happening? I don't really want to talk about that. I want to just ask you guys a simple question. How bad is this for the sport of baseball? Tom, I'll have you go first here.
Interesting question. I think it's bad in a way where you don't get to see the best arms throw. Like that's kind of what like where all the money is, obviously. Like I have two like sides to it. So like obviously like that's where the money is seeing the best guys throw and not seeing them in there really, really sucks. On the back end, it's like you're seeing a bunch of randoms that like maybe would not get a chance normally. Like seeing a lot of random like people that might like shine out, see a lot of like cool stories come up. So like obviously I don't wish injuries on anybody and don't want that to happen, but that's kind of like where I'm at with it. Without getting into anything else, like I just think it's for the game, it does suck, but just on the other side of the coin, you can get something out of it.
Demetrius, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I agree. It's not good. like you say too, you do pay for watching these players play. The one thing that's like crazy, there's so many more injuries. I didn't even realize some of these guys get hurt because that's how many there are right now. Like I didn't realize Framber also got hurt. Like it's becoming on a rate of where since the past weekend, it's like past 5 days, there's been like 10 arms that either have arm fatigue, UCL injuries in their elbow. It's like crazy to see that these top performers can't perform anymore, and just the sport's going to realize like, oh crap, our top pitchers aren't going to be out there.
Yeah, yeah. Connor, what about you, buddy?
I mean, I'm picking like Tom was. I mean, I thought you guys both hit it on the nail on the head. But Tom, when you talking about like the random people that are have to fill in for these big name pitchers, like you guys got names like Framber Valdez, Shane Bieber, Spencer Strider, Yuri Perez, like Sandy Alcantara as well. Jacob DeGrom's hurt. Like, I mean, he's hurt a lot, but these are these are big names that who garner a lot of attention and a lot of people coming to watch these guys pitch. I mean, you have multiple Cy Young Award winners in the last 5 years who just aren't going to be. They're not going to play this year because they're hurt. Um, I don't know what the answer is. I don't think there's some like crystal ball anyone can look in and be like, how do we fix this? Like, I'm looking at a list right now and it's 28 names right now, and they're all starting pitch. Oh, not all starting pitchers, but they're all pretty big name pitchers, and everyone will recognize who they are. It I don't. It's a pandemic right now, and I don't have the answer to it. I don't think anyone really has the answer to it. But something has to be done about at least having a dialogue of how to fix this issue.
Yeah, I think MLB is doing a research study into what's going on.
I do have a quote from Tyler Glasnow. He was about him and his injury recently, about like the changing of the baseballs, like going back to that whole thing. Like him not really saying it's not like the pitch clock. It's more of just like how I'm warming up with a certain ball, and then I'm going into the game and I have like the same kind of ball for the first 5 innings or first 4 innings, and then like the fifth inning comes around, it's a different kind of baseball. And I'm gripping it differently, and then like that's when my arm gets like fucked up because the next day I'm like, holy shit, why am I sore in places where I'm not normally sore? Like that's an issue.
That's
So
a
I know
big
that's kind of been a topic recently, but
Spider tack.
all the
Yeah, I
bases
was going to say.
can't be uniform. Like we should have something that, like the fact that we have different bat boys or whoever is rubbing up the baseballs at every different ballpark
Oh yeah, crazy.
is ridiculous because they're all going to be slightly different. I was actually reading something from Bill Pulsifer on Twitter today. He's a
Hey,
former big time Met prospect. Didn't pan out, but he was talking about how the tackiness, he's talking about the tack of the baseball. And he was also, sorry about that, he was also talking about um, that the seams of the baseball need to be higher because they're too low and that forces players to grip tighter, which is a big issue
Yeah.
with
make
breaking.
pitches filthier.
Yeah,
Make pitches filthier again.
right, right.
Well, I
Without
was
as much effort on the arm.
I was seeing something where since fastballs are becoming less and less prevalent as just a primary pitch or a pitch in general, as you see more guys going to sinkers or cutters, um,
Mm.
to keep the fastball relevant, a lot of guys are lowering that arm slot to keep the ride higher, right? Because when you lower your arm slot, the ball it seems like it rises, even though it just stays on plane. Whereas if you're coming from right over the top, the ball is gonna it's gonna sink naturally, right?
Right.
So a lot of these guys will lower the arm slot. I don't know if that has direct correlation with arm injury or not, but and then of course as people start to throw harder, but I mean there's people. I mean Nolan Ryan threw like upper 90s, like, and he never was that guy ever hurt. I mean he threw like 9 million innings in the big leagues. Like,
Wasn't hurt
I,
until he blew out like his last start.
yeah, and he was
yeah.
probably like what is he 44 years old or something like that? Ridiculous.
I
I
will
don't.
say, I will say it's something with the nature of the game now with pitchers just and like the culture with pitching now is just throwing as hard as you can every single pitch, regardless of it. I mean, you see it, pitchers now don't go deep into games. Like 5 innings
Yeah.
is a good start now. Like 10 years ago, it was a freaking like 7 innings was a good start. Like it's
Yeah.
changing so rapidly, and that's when you see a lot more injuries with stuff like that happen because your body is not meant to throw a baseball over. Like it's an unnatural motion you're doing. You're putting a lot of stress on your forearm, and you do one thing wrong, and you're while you're moving 100 miles an hour, something bad's gonna happen. And I think to your point of like guys like Nolan Ryan, we look at guys like Greg Maddux too. Like those guys didn't throw super hard, but they didn't throw super hard because they knew if they did every single pitch, they couldn't go deep in the game. So they found a way around it to go deeper into games. So I mean, it's hard to say that it's like will put your finger on what it is, but I think just the culture with pitching now is changing it to just being like, I'm gonna throw as hard as I can. If I blow my arm out, I blow my arm out.
Right. I mean, and you get rewarded for it because that's how you get to the pros,
And
right?
that's because you're drafted by Velo. Yeah.
That's what
There's
Josh Hepka was saying the other day on
Yeah.
Twitter.
there's the longevity isn't there. I mean, I doubt Nolan Ryan was going 100% every single pitch. I mean,
I
I know
saw
Maddox wasn't because he
no.
prioritized location over velocity, but Maddox could get it up there to 96, at least when he was on the Cubs. So it's not like he didn't have it in the tank.
Pedro.
Yeah, Demetrius, what were you saying?
I was gonna say Keith Hernandez put a link on Twitter the other day to a Facebook post. I don't know if anyone saw that, but it was very like a very older person thing to do. But it was a Facebook post from Jim Cott, and it was very interesting. He was talking about like because if I know we didn't mention directly, but LBPA put a statement saying how the pitch clock is the reason why these injuries are happening, which I don't agree with, but that's a whole other topic. We'll get into that at this point. But he was saying pretty much how like if pitchers can't recover from throwing every 10 seconds to become an outfielder, like it's training these pitchers to realize to get these rests and realizing that you don't have to throw or try to go this hard every time you're throwing is insane. You're damaging your young talent, and it's just using these breaking balls that they shouldn't be trying to emphasize their grips on as much is just waiting for a reservation in the operating room, pretty much. He said. So it's interesting to see like how these older time pitchers are chiming in and just saying how, hey, look, we have these rules in place for MLB and they're good for baseball, and it's not that problem.
Yeah, I have I definitely respect what the older guys say and what they talk about. It's just I have a hard time, I guess like kind of listening to them, what they say.
Whole different game. Whole different game, though. I agree.
I
Yeah,
share
Whole
that
different game
sentiment.
than when they play.
Would you through now, you're gonna get destroyed. Like
Yeah. Oh my God.
I'm sure if you put Adrian Hauser back in 1965, he's probably a top end pitcher.
Imagine if they saw Shintaro Fujinami in 1960, like
Like,
their brains would have exploded.
right, exactly. Um, I mean, they literally did explode because that was what Nolan Ryan was, and he was striking like
Yeah.
400 people a year.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I want to get back. I want to get to one more topic in the last 5 minutes, and that is this Cardinals franchise. It's been a very interesting 10 or so years for them. I feel like they got kind of behind the eight ball with what was going on in baseball, not following the trends um, of velocity, of the modern analytical game because they were still having success. And I feel like they're just in a really weird spot. So, kind of curious on your thoughts about the Cardinals franchise right now, especially.
I mean, I think the Cardinals franchise was so close to being something that was so great,
They
but
are.
then they are, but like they fell off, like you were saying, so almost like randomly. Not randomly, like you can kind of see it, but it's like, come on, like you have such a great legacy, and then you're kind of just like pissing it away almost. It's weird.
It's crazy. The fact that they just lost so many top prospects and didn't have the ability to feel like they should retain them is nuts. I mean, they trade away these guys like Sandy Alcantara, Zach Gallen, Tyler O'Neill, Randy Rosarena. Like, it's just crazy that they went with the mindset of we need to win right this second, and this future isn't a future problem. It just doesn't make sense to me. Like, you got to have some invest in your young players, and it seems that the Cardinals just kept their old ways up. It's weird.
I think part of the reason is you see that core kind of disappear from those late 2000s, early 2010s. I mean, you guys like Yadi Molina, Pujols, Chris Carpenter, Adam Wainwright, like those guys. You see them, dissipate now, and they retire, and that's like they had a whole culture. Like as much as I hate to say it, like I mean, I think they made the playoffs like every year for at least over like a decade or over a decade.
Mhm.
And
They
they
had back
2011 that 2011 team has like that 2011 series of the Phillies will always have a huge like mark on me because of just how good that team was. I mean, they only had like 85 wins that year, and they just took the Phillies to the woodshed, and that was like the best Phillies team I've seen in my lifetime. But they just had that culture. Once you got to October, it seemed like every year they won at least one series. Like they were winning games, no matter who they had fielding the team. They had that culture with Yachty and Pujols and et cetera, right? So once you see those guys leave the locker room, like it just you got to have guys to fill in that role, and I just feel like they haven't done it.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing with me too. I mean, they literally give their all their guys a book that says like the cardinal way, like the way
Yeah.
that they go about things, and um,
Very Yankee like.
Yankee like, very much Yankee like. But it seems like they've lost their way a little bit because they got behind in the trends, and usually the Cardinals were a team that were setting trends. Like in the '80s, they had this really fast team. They relied on playing small ball and running, like running all over the place.
Lou Brock.
Right, Lou Brock was earlier than that, but yeah,
Ozzy.
ridiculous talent, and I don't know, it's kind of sad. Like I don't like the Cardinals, I actually hate them, but
That's
it's
what I was
sad to
saying.
see a team with that much history, kind of lose their way a little bit, and um, I don't know, like they have a chance to be decent this year, but I don't really see them doing very much. And one thing, it's like they seem to have hugged the wrong prospects. I mean, and
Mhm.
of course you mentioned it. They let go of all this talent. Adolis Garcia is in there too. I mean, look
Mhm.
at what's his face? Who Jordan Hicks? He's pitching
Yeah.
Started.
fantastic as a starter for the Giants right
But
now.
they never gave him that opportunity. Never did.
Yeah, at least not for a long period of time. So I don't know. I think they're in a weird spot, and we'll see if they can catch up. I mean, they hired Heim Bloom, so we'll see.
It's
But
funny how they sign these guys like Lance Lynn again. They have Sonny Gray who made his debut yesterday and a good debut, but like not the same guys they were 10 years ago.
Hmm.
and they do have a little bit of a young core coming up with Walker and Brendan. What's his friggin' name? I always forget his name. Brendan Donovan,
Donovan.
and then
Mason
there's
Wynn.
a couple of Nate Burl, not
Yeah.
Nate Burleson, that's a wide receiver,
He's
but
a
Alec
win.
Alec Burleson and Mason Wynn. Yeah, so I mean, you have some younger guys, but you do that. They have to translate to the big leagues, and I mean, so far they haven't had much of an opportunity, but maybe they will.
Yeah.
Fun.
So that's what we got for today. It was really great talking about the A's, especially with you, Schnabel. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Connor.
It's getting
Thanks for
harder and harder
having
to talk
us.
about them.
In the
Yeah,
future.
thanks for having me, man.
But yeah, we'll see you next week, guys.
Peace out.